Hello, it's good to see you again. Thanks for joining me. And you are joining me for a particularly auspicious occasion, which is we have hit 1,000 subscribers, which doesn't necessarily mean anything to me, at least, other than several people are enjoying our little visits and that there's at least a very small desire to see more of it. So I'm enjoying a beautiful afternoon with this very good cigar that I can't light evenly. I smoke cigars much less than I smoke a pipe because they're much more expensive. But I think if I had to choose between one or the other for the rest of my life, I think I would go with cigars. And this is a a pretty good one. This is an Ashton. It's fairly mild, but it's a favorite of mine and my brother's. So I had an extra one and thought, what an excellent occasion to enjoy this, other than sitting here with you out of doors. Now, what we'll also be doing today, other than just enjoying a smoke and a pint and the sunshine to celebrate this milestone, we'll also be doing a drawing. And the way in which, as I explained, the way in which that you enter yourself to be drawn is to submit a question for this Q&A, which I will address. Here I have them all typed out and some notes on some of my answers. So I'll do my best to try and not read it like a speech. Good orators never have to seem like they're glued to the text, but I'm not as good of an orator as I would like, so you might have to forgive me. But we'll go through the questions that you've asked, and then we'll draw, and then we'll go through other details there. So why don't we get started? Okay. So this first one is from, these are in no particular order, but this first one is from Visual Garden 2718. They ask, "Hey David, love the videos. You may have mentioned in the video, but I remember in a previous video of yours, you claimed you had no interest in reading any of the Game of Thrones books. Is there any particular reason as to why you would not attempt any of those books? Thanks." Well, Visual, that is a good question. And yes, that's true. I have zero desire to ever read any of the Game of Thrones books. To be quite honest, what I've heard about them is not stellar. And what I've heard about Martin, the author, is also not stellar, or at least uninteresting to me. A good summary of my aversion to Martin's bibliography can be illustrated by my response to I think it was a 2019 article from The Independent. It's describing an interview that, I can't remember who the interviewer was, but they were interviewing Martin. And Martin expressed some criticism of The Lord of the Rings, highlighting what he viewed as various plot holes. In this Q&A, Martin said he kept wanting to argue with Professor Tolkien, especially his ending, summarized Tolkien's ending, and Aragorn ruled wisely and well for 100 years or something. Not satisfied with good writing, Martin asked, but what was his tax policy? Speaking of Aragorn's tax policy, did Aragorn carry out a policy of systematic orc genocide, or was there orc rehabilitation going on? Okay, so first, to have those be qualms is a little silly, and also for a distinguished author like Martin to miss that all of those quibbles are not plot holes. A plot hole is something that does not explain some aspect of the forward thrust of the plot. None of those questions are plot holes. None of them. None are technically plot holes. So the fact that Martin, who is, I assume, a technically good writer, does not understand that is a little embarrassing for him. Second, the insipid whininess in these issues that Martin takes with Tolkien, stating that Aragorn ruled well, only to retort, as it seems, for Martin to say, well, only if he holds my 21st century, XYZ tax policy. Well, that's absurd. Aragorn is not a 21st century whatever Martin's political allegiance, national and political allegiances happen to be. So why on earth would his tax policy mirror that of Martin's? So it was just very whiny. Martin's qualms about the poor plight of the orc are so out of touch with mythology, Middle-earth, reality, and really common sense that it hardly requires a response. My first thought when I heard that is like, well, why on earth would Aragorn do a thing like that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Doesn't Martin know? He makes some comment about, Tolkien makes a comment about the orcs, retreating to, the mountains and caves and things like that. And my instinct is to say, why on earth would Aragorn I hunt down all of the orcs in mountains and in caves? That's where orcs and goblins live in mythologies. I mean, I just finished rereading George MacDonald's The Princess and the Goblin. And where do the goblins live? In the mountain. Is there, the king is not running around trying to kill all of them? No, of course not. So Martin just does not understand how different mythologies operate, apparently. One last complaint that will help illustrate my distaste for Martin is he also speculated on, and this I will read verbatim, I understand that Martin speculated about the possibility of orc-elf marriages, and he used the term specifically intermarriage, like they were, like a Caucasian couple and a historically African couple, or African person and a Caucasian person. Could they possibly get intermarried? Which is so ridiculous that would be like, oh, can elves and orcs? This just reveals Martin's really utter lack of understanding. I think the speculation of his is at best like wondering if Portia could ever marry Shylock. So think about that from Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. Think about Portia, the character of Portia, and the character of Shylock in that play. And if you don't understand what I'm saying because you haven't read the play, you need to read the play. But it's like asking, would Portia and Shylock ever marry? And yeah, they could. But the more real question is, the more real answer is no, of course not. Portia would never marry Shylock. A Portia would never marry a Shylock. So I can only bring myself to think that someone who has revealed their imagination to be so destitute that they could write anything, this is going to be very harsh, but that they, in my opinion, could write anything more than the most recent lining to the rubbish bin of history. I just can't foresee that I would enjoy any of his imaginative work. I'm certain, one thing I am certain of, to his credit, is I'm certain that he's a technically good and interesting writer. If I read something of his, I'm sure I would read through it, plow through it, and it would be interesting. His use of diction, his use of prose, and I don't know if there's any poetry involved, but he would technically handle those things well, which unfortunately even good storytellers often don't. So to his credit, I'm sure he's famous and distinguished for a reason. I don't think I would ever find anything of enjoyment in him, and so I'll never try. Now that I've complained as our first question, let's move on a little bit. So this next question is from NZ Anime Manga. They ask, would you please contemplate doing a tour of your bookshelves? It can be a single video or a series, chatting to us about particular shelves. Thanks. He also asks, which authors, if any, do you wish to read their entire bibliography, their complete body of works? And are any a major priority for you in the short term? So first, I faithfully promise that I will indefatigably contemplate doing a tour of my bookshelves. I think that would be a lot of fun. We've looked at individual bookshelves before. Sorry, give me just a moment here. I'm just going to puff on this, try and get this going again. Okay. Sorry about that. So yes, I think I'll contemplate doing that here in the near future. There are a handful of things that actually I'm planning in the near future, and that's probably a good addition. So I will consider that proposition. As to your second question, which authors do you wish to read their entire bibliography? Yes, of course, there are many. William Shakespeare is kind of the main one that I actually have in the short term. I'd like to read through at least all of the big ones, his big tragedies, big comedies, histories, that sort of thing. Antonia Fraser is another author that I'd very much be interested in reading all of her works. She focuses more on history, and she has some very interesting books around the Reformation, around the French Revolution. That I think I would find very interesting. Thomas Aquinas is another one. I've actually only kind of flipped through the, I can't believe, the Summa before to answer or look for an answer on a particular theological question. I've never read through it systematically. So he's another one. Shakespeare, again, is probably the closest to what I would say is a priority in the short term. So thank you for your question. Next one. This is from LD Jackson 3973. And of course, thank you so much for your questions. They have several actually here. So this first one. 3 people who had the biggest influence on me as a reader were my maternal grandmother, who helped raise me, her brother, and my favorite history teacher. They all shared my love of reading and learning, and so encouraged and influenced my quest to read and learn as much as I could and still do. Who most influenced you, and beside you, who is influencing and encouraging your children? That's wonderful to hear, quite honestly. It's very interesting that most of the time you never get into, no one ever picks up a reading almost on their own. There's always some nostalgia that someone gave them an interesting book, someone tried to get them into reading at an earlier age. And so that's wonderful, especially that it's, your grandmother, your Uncle Charles, and your history teacher. My mom and dad, of course, I was homeschooled for a great many years by my mother along with several of my siblings. And so my mom and dad both were the cornerstones of my interest in reading. We didn't have a very nice TV. Even so much of growing up, we still had a TV that you had to switch on. And if you wanted to change the volume or a channel or anything like that, there were dials on it. And we had that for a very long time. So we read a lot. We played outside and we read a lot. So my mom and dad are the biggest, of course. This will be no surprise to anyone, but Malcolm Guite was a huge influence in me getting interested again in poetry as an adult after high school. I wasn't really ever interested in poetry, and that's probably mostly because I did attend a public high school during my high school years, but they never read good poetry. I can't really remember reading much poetry in high school, and any of it was garbage. It was modern trash. Not to say that moderns can't write good poetry. I'm a modern and I think that I write good poetry. But it was just not good. So anyway, Malcolm Guite, and then also specifically two of my brothers who are co-founders with me of our wine and book club called Symposium. Those would be the main individuals, main influences. They also ask, LD Jackson asks, along with books, I cannot live without music, especially my two recordings of Mozart's clarinet quintets, some Jim Croce, Ella Fitzgerald, and Louis Armstrong, Ella and Louise again. What are some of your favorite pieces of music and musicians? I have a very principled stance, and it's very snobby, but I have a very principled stance on the music I listen to and the music I will admit to liking. My favorite composers are, this is going to shock no one, but Bach, Beethoven, Handel, and Mozart. My favorite pieces are Bach's Inventions and Sinfonias. I like all of them. I think there are 16, and they're just all very pleasant. Beethoven's Sixth Symphony is a very pastoral. It's perfect. It would be perfect to listen to actually outside on an afternoon like this. Handel's Messiah is a great favorite as well. And Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro. The Marriage of Figaro is probably my favorite opera. An honorable mention will also go to Jean Sibelius's First Symphony, which actually I heard about because I was reading a book, and they said that C.S. Lewis really liked Sibelius's First Symphony, and I listened to it, and I was like, oh wow, I like this too. So, LD Jackson also asks, although I can easily say that all of my books are my favorites, if I found out that I could only have a few along with my Bible, I'd have to have Lost Horizon by James Hilton, Connections by James Burke, Equal Time for Pogo by Walt Kelly, The Lord of the Rings, and anything by Woodhouse. What books would still have a home in your bookshelf? This is a dangerously close topic to a recent visit where I talked about, if I had to whittle my library down to 10, that would be my list. So I would honestly point you to that. But for the sake of answering your question, I'll keep it to just 5, and I'll keep it brief. So Dante's Divine Comedy, The Wind in the Willows, my Divine Office, my prayer book, The Rule of Saint Benedict, and The Golden Legend. So there you go. And lastly, like my books, I can never do anything like a top 10 of my favorite movies because all of the movies that I love are my favorites. Still, the ones that I would always name if I were asked are Field of Dreams, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. That's the first Star Trek movie or show or anything that I watched, and it was horrifying. I think I saw it when I was 12, and the thing going in the ear freaked me out. Harvey, starring James Stewart, While You Were Sleeping, with Sandra Bullock and Bill Pullman. So which movies do you love most? They say, can't wait to learn more about you, someone who has quickly become my favorite YouTuber as well as one of my favorite human beings. That is so kind of you. Sláinte to you, and another sláinte to your wife and children. God bless you, David, and may he hold you and yours in the palm of his hand. Love to you all. Sláinte to you. Thank you so much, LD. This is actually pretty good. I didn't prepare an answer to this, because I wanted this to be off the cuff a little bit, because I don't really know. Charade with Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. That's a solid one. And Rear Window with Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly. I think those would be my favorite. As far as a TV show, because most shows now are series or a TV show. Frasier, I just kind of run through just a repeat cycle. I've seen Frasier, I don't know how many times. This is going to shock you, but I very much resonate with the humor in Frasier. It's very dry, very witty. It's hilarious, and so it's very easy to return to. So there you go. Okay, Jade Schaefer asks, and Jade, you've been very prominent you're another prominent commenter, conversationalist with me, and so I thank you for asking a question here. Jade says, congratulations in advance on 1K. What book, other than the Bible, has had a great impact on you? I thought about this for a while, and there were several that came to mind, but I think the most obvious really has to be Dante's Divine Comedy. Dante illustrates so perfectly and so beautifully the plight of the sinner, the life of sanctification and a vision of blessedness. It is so much easier to depict evil and depravity than it is to depict real holiness, real goodness. And I think Dante, trying to think of examples, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien does this pretty well in some of his characters. C.S. Lewis sometimes does this, although, like in Narnia, I think it's in a more adolescent way. That's the best way I can have of saying it. But depicting real goodness, I think Dante, in my opinion, is maybe the only one who, in his Paradiso and in the figure, particularly of Beatrice, depicts goodness well. It's very transcendent. It's very, like, Paradiso often is people's least favorite because it's the least, they can identify it with the characters in Paradiso less because all of them are saints, and of course we're not. So anyway, I think Dante does that better than anyone, and so much. The comedy is really encyclopedic. So there's so much that he has encapsulated from the classicists and from the medieval period that you just can't find in any other single work. So Jade also asks, what watch, if money were no object, would you get right now if you could? What other hobbies are you interested in? Here's to many more videos and subscribers. I suppose the question about which watch, if money were no object, is a different question than what is my Grail watch, because I already have that, and you've seen that on my wrist sometime. But it's a mid-1960s Omega Seamaster. The reference number is 166.002. So that's my Grail watch, and I've had it actually since I got it when my first son was born. And so I have my Grail watch. Now, that does not mean I'm not interested in buying any more watches. As anyone who likes watches knows that once you buy one, even if it's your favorite, you still want others. If money were no object, it would probably be something cynical like Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711 because they're worth $250,000. I do think they're pretty. I do think they're a nice timepiece. They're simple, understated, and if you have a real eye for watches, you would recognize it. Otherwise, the riffraff on the street, no one's going to come up to you and say, "Oh, is that a Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711?" So it would probably be that. I think more realistically, really the one that I would like now actually is a Tudor Black Bay 54. It's a small. I like dive watch complications. So that's a good one. It would be it'd be a good go anywhere, do anything watch. I can give the boys a bath. I can go swimming. I do dishes, and I don't have to worry about it, harming the watch because it has the proper water resistance. So I think it would be that. As far as other hobbies, being a dad and a husband takes up most things. Writing poetry. I'm actually working on another Arthurian-esque poem as well, with that kind of follows in the strain of the repentance of Sir Lancelot with my other Griffin poem. Classical music and opera. I like watching plays, like Shakespeare's plays. If you can find like a nice one on YouTube or something, I like watching those. If I had more money and more time, I'd very much go and see live performances more. But I don't, and so that will probably not be until the boys are older that I can do those things more. I also like, I found, because my day job is a desk job, I found that I like fixing things with my hands. Like we just took, it was a little tiny nightstand that my wife had for forever from, I think, her grandmother. And a couple weekends ago, me and a couple of my boys went to Home Depot and we got some paints and we cleaned it up and painted it and just kind of gave it a facelift and kept it new. I didn't want to change it too much, but I wanted to, keep it in the family, keep it nice. So that's another thing. Next, Neptunian Dreamer 6526 asks, I would be curious to know what is something, a genre, theme, author, series, or individual book that would never be found on or anywhere near your bookshelf. It can be just as interesting to hear about the sorts of things that people don't wish to read. Also, what is the tattoo on your finger? So first, the banal detail. This is a triquetra. It's that Norse knot that is often associated with the Trinity. It's a bit like the clover with St. Patrick when Christian missionaries were evangelizing Scandinavia. They said, oh, that's a perfect symbol of, you have this threeness, but this oneness, this multiplicity and unity. And that was very descriptive. It was a perfect cultural image that they already had to help them understand the Trinity. So that's what it is. I got it when my wife and I have matching tattoos for that. If I could go back, I have a more principled stance on tattoos now. If I could go back, I probably would not get it. But that's what it is, and I'm not plagued with regret that I have it. But as far as what books would never be found on or anywhere near my bookshelves, horror. I'm thinking about like H.P. Lovecraft, something like that. I think it's immoral to write or read gratuitous horror. I would distinguish this from horror written to, writing horror or having horrific elements in something like I recently read Perelandra. You have this like real horror in Perelandra, but Lewis isn't reveling in it, and you're not supposed to either. It's supposed to elicit like, this is what evil looks like. This is what the demonic looks like. So I think for utility, it's okay. I think in like H.P. Lovecraft, it's just reveling in it or stewing in it, and I think it's gross and terrible. I think it's awful. What else? Anything by John Steinbeck. God, I hate John Steinbeck so much. It is no wonder that many people who grow up in the education system today hate reading, because all their teachers give them is John Steinbeck. Like, just shoot me in the head like Lenny. Like, give me a break. It puts me off all reading. Game of Thrones, we already talked about that. I want the Marquis, anything by the Marquis de Sade. It's kind of a gimme, but those sorts of things. Really obscene. Yuck. No thanks. Next, Eternal Reading asks, I have just found your channel mate, subscribed. We have a lot in common with our tastes in books and both pipe smokers. Hey, not many of us out there now. That is indeed true. But I gotta say, your dress sense is more stylish than mine. I'm looking forward to watching your future videos. My question is, what is your favorite pipe tobacco? Well, thank you very much. I was convinced, kind of against my desire, in terms of my dress, that both men and women have a way of dressing modestly, and women should dress modestly by not showing too much, and men should also do so as well. And it's not because men show a little ankle and it makes the women go wild, but it's more that men actually have a tendency to preen and stick their chest out more, and traditional dress like a jacket and a tie and a collar, restrict is the wrong word, but it takes the attention off of you as a person. Anytime I'm asked, because when I go to work, no one dresses anywhere close to this. The closest thing you might get is someone might wear a polo shirt, one of those golf, polyester polo shirts. And anytime I'm asked, why do you dress like that, David? Because I dress like this for work most of the time. I say, because you're worth my best. Anyone who has to see me is worth my best. So this is why I dress this way. It is not expensive to dress this way. I've had this shirt for years and years and years. This jacket is a new jacket, but I got it for less than $40 on eBay. You just have to know your measurements and what style you like. Boom, $40. This tie is a Brooks Brother, 100% silk, excellent quality. I got it for $10 on eBay. None of this requires a lot of money. It just requires discipline. So there's my soapbox. I'll get off it now. To answer your question, Eternal Reading, My question is, what is your favorite pipe tobacco? I most often smoke Lane 1Q. That's a very easy, it's inexpensive, and it's pleasant. It's not very harsh. It's sweet. You get licorice, vanilla. So it's very easy to smoke, and the people sitting around you, if you're smoking, are not just instantly offended by this harsh, leathery, aromatic. Three Nuns is good. I've tried that. It's more expensive, but I will get it as a treat or something. I think my favorite pipe tobacco I've ever smoked, and I've smoked it once or twice, is Peterson's Royal Yacht tobacco. That is my favorite, but it's like $50 a tin, so I'm almost never going to smoke that. So anyway, those are my favorites. Those are my most often smoked. So there we go. Thank you for your question. E. Burr 1023 asks, "Hi David, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Tom Bombadil. As you know, there are lots of interesting theories as to what he is, and I would be very interested in hearing your take. I'm also curious to know what your favorite blends are to smoke." Well, I just answered, so there you go. As far as Tom Bombadil, I actually wrote some notes here, so I'll try to read these a little bit because I had to put my thoughts together on this, and this actually might warrant a separate visit where we can delve into this a little bit more. But I'll just kind of go over very high view. So to the question of who or what is Tom Bombadil, I really have three answers. The one that I hold most firmly is the least interesting. So I think Tolkien anticipates, and this is one the opinion I hold most firmly on this. I think Tolkien anticipates this question that almost everyone seems to have about Tom, and he writes his answer into The Lord of the Rings. When asked, we are told that Tom is himself. I think Frodo asks Goldberry, who is he? And she says, he is. He is as you have seen him. In the same way that I think if you asked me, who is David Barr, I would just say, well, I am. And I don't think some people take like the he is, like the I am statement, Yahweh from scripture. I am not convinced that it's like that Tom Bombadil is this, quasi like God character in the story. I don't think that. Tolkien also commented that he did not think Tom is improved at all by philosophizing about him, which means you're not supposed to think like, who is he or what is he? I think who Tom is just, he's not supposed to be a type or an allegory for some mythological figure or force. We know Tolkien didn't particularly like naked allegory in that way. Tom is an eccentricity within Middle-earth. He's literally something extra out of the abundance of Tolkien's creativity that he just inserts for just pleasure. Tom is a marvel to be enjoyed, not contemplated. That is, I'm sure, a very unsatisfying answer, but that's the one that I hold most firmly. I think another is that Tom and Goldberry together are like these primordial earth and water sort of spirits. You think of, these old English or old bardic forces, something like that. They're like Chaucer's airish beasts, maybe something like that. Super aerial and sub-ethereal creatures. Last, and this is my most recent actually, and most tentative theory as to who Tom could be. I've heard before that Tom has associations with the classical god Jupiter, or like Zeus. I find this fairly thin. It's more obvious to me that if he were associated with a classical deity, a Norse or Greco-Roman deity like that, it would be with the Norse god Odin and the classical Mercury or Hermes. For example, he wanders about his land and can do so, as we said before, very quickly. Mercury is, of course, the messenger god, and Odin is a wanderer. Tom's mode of communication reveals he's in touch with the white-hot center of language, like Lewis's Vertrilbia in the Ransom trilogy. Mercury is the god of speechcraft. Odin is All-Father, which is not quite the same as Oldest and Fatherless, but they conjure similar thoughts. Odin is married to Freya, who is daughter to Njordur, who is the sea god, which makes the connection with Goldberry as the river daughter an interesting coincidence. So anyway, there you go. Ryan Stewart 1630 asks, what type of books do you rotate through on a given day? Related question would be, how do you ensure a good balance of reads? I almost without fail every day read at least once through my prayer book, the Daily Office Divine Worship. I also almost without fail pick up some sort of poetry throughout the day. And third, I also almost always have a longer work of either fiction or nonfiction that is occupying the brunt of my reading throughout the day. How do you ensure a good balance of reads? This is actually another topic that I'd like to focus an individual visit on. How can you read multiple works at the same time, not miss out on something or get them jumbled? That's another question I'll answer in future. I don't try, to be honest. I read what I'm interested in at the moment. If I'm interested in poetry, if I'm interested in, a work of nonfiction in particular, or history or nonfiction, I just read what I'm interested in, and I have a wealth of it already. So that's an unsatisfying answer as well, but there you go. Clam H84 asks, could you give more in-depth information, book recommendations for children? I'm going screen-free with my newborn and will be reading Lord of the Rings to them whilst feeding as their first books. I have started a list of books that I will read to them as they grow and would love your ideas. We have a very similar mindset about baby books, most of which I really do not like. I totally agree. I will dedicate an entire visit to this, and this I can show you all of the children's books that I have that I read my children. You're totally right. Most children's books today are ugly and drab and dumb, and so I don't read them to my children. My particular rule with children's books is that if I don't find a book interesting, I don't read it. I throw it away or give it away or something like that. I'm not above book burning, so if it's in any way objectionable to me, I don't read it to them. My children are not dumb, and therefore if I found something uninteresting, I would assume that they either also find it uninteresting or they should find it uninteresting, in which case I'm not going to expose them to it. And again, because your impulse is such an excellent one, I'll dedicate an entire visit, maybe one of our next visits, to that question, actually. Don't be afraid to read snippets of larger works to them. My boys can't sit still for, an entire chapter of Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or Wind in the Willows or anything like that. And so I just read little snippets. There are several works that are very easy to do that with. Wind in the Willows is an excellent one. Actually, it's very easy to just pick up and read a few pages just anywhere. It's so approachable in that way. So, yeah, don't feel like you have to finish a chapter before they lose interest. And also don't feel like you have to have their full undivided attention when you read. Most of the time when I'm reading, my boys are off, they're playing and I'm just reading out loud, and they might catch snippets. So what? Last question by Morgan Inform says, new father here, what are some novels you would recommend that do a good job of connecting specifically with fathers to sons? The Road by McCarthy is already one of my favorites. I've never heard of that. I've never read it, of course. It depends on how old your son is, honestly. Boy, that's a good question. I don't think I really have a good answer, honestly. I I read them what I think they should be interested in. And at some point, they might have diverging interests, and that's okay, in which I'll probably pick up something that they like, and I'll read that to them. Or we'll read it together as they get older. When they're really young, you're a new father, when they're really young, they don't have their own interests, or they shouldn't have their own interests. Their interests are informed by your interests. And so what you're interested in, be passionate about it and read it with them. Works of fiction, the classics, Wind in the Willows, Beowulf even. I have that, really nice rebound copy of Britain Long Ago, just these short summaries of old English and Britain and Welsh stories, Beowulf, Alfred, St. Columba, stuff like that. So they will at some age probably have diverging interests, in which case if they're not bad, if they're not objectionable, read it with them. Delve into their interests, even if it's not something you would pick. So, yeah. So those are all the questions I got. Thank you very much for giving or asking them, and I hope I gave satisfactory, if not satisfactory, at least interesting answers. So there you go. We also talked about doing a book giveaway. And again, the way that you got entered to that is by asking a question. So all the people that I just read off your questions, I have all of your names in this hat here, and I'll draw one. And the winner the victor will get in touch with me in some fashion, and I'll send you a book from my own library. I'm not going to buy something new. It will be something that is currently sitting on my bookshelf, probably has my signature in it, as this is mine, when and what year I got it. But me and the victor will work through, what maybe you'd be interested to see, and I'll send you something. So let's go ahead and do this. I have to do this without looking, because that's cheating. Okay. If you have a drum set, please give me a drum roll. So our winner is at Ryan Stewart 1630. Congratulations, Ryan. So here's what I'd ask, Ryan. If you would be so kind, send me an email. My email you can find on my my channel page. It should be on there. If you can't find it, just put a comment in, and I'll get in touch with you. We'll get in touch together, and I'll send you a book from my library as thank you for asking questions, and also just for keeping me company on our various visits. It has been a pleasure to visit with you. I very much enjoyed kind of talking to you, with you about sharing some of my poetry. I mean, all of my poetry is as of yet unpublished, but it's nice to have someone other than my wife or children who have heard some of my poetry and enjoyed it. So thank you as always, and I'll drink the last drops to our visits. Sláinte.